There was a time and a place when this ordinary milk can held something more precious than gold. A time when fresh milk couldn't be had for gold. A time when the enemy was everywhere, controlling every aspect of Jewish life in the ghettos of Eastern Europe. When two commonplace milk cans in two cities were enlisted to safeguard something even more priceless than milk: memories. When the Nazis forced Jews into ghettos in 1941, they prohibited the basic necessities of life, like meat, eggs, and milk. Official ration cards allowed each person only 200 calories a day, 1/5 of what's necessary to sustain life. Smuggling food from outside the ghetto became a way of life. Residents even devised an ingenious system for smuggling milk into the ghetto without bringing it through the main gate.
And they would actually have hoses going through houses that straddled the ghetto fence. And they'd fill the milk cans in the ghetto and then distribute them all over the ghetto.
For most ghetto residents, the struggle to survive was a full-time occupation. But in two ghettos, one in Warsaw, Poland, the other in Kovno, Lithuania, two small clandestine groups managed to preserve a record of the horrors perpetrated against them, thanks, in part, to milk cans. Emanuel Ringelblum, a high school teacher and historian in Warsaw, led Oneg Shabbat, or Joy of the Sabbath, as the group called themselves. Oneg Shabbat members carefully collected everything that would paint a picture of the difficult life in the ghetto: diaries, proclamations, even ration cards. No piece of evidence was too small. The one thing Ringelblum's archive in Warsaw didn't contain was photographs. That would be left to someone else, somewhere else, a town called Kovno. Unbeknownst to Ringelblum, across the border in Lithuania, a man named George Kaddish was making a record even more astonishing and much more dangerous. Kaddish built himself a camera and smuggled film into the ghetto in a hollowed-out set of crutches, a pretty dangerous move.
Owning a camera was illegal. Owning film was illegal. Just the ownership of these materials endangered his life.
Kaddish managed to take his incredible photos by hiding the camera in his coat and shooting through a buttonhole. His very first picture was perhaps his most horrifying. Kaddish heard a commotion and gunfire. He ran to the site to find that 3,000 men, women, and children had been shot dead on Nazi orders. A dying man had scrawled a Yiddish word using the blood of his murdered son. Kaddish captured that word: Nekome, revenge. From then on, Kaddish snapped pictures at every opportunity, from the forced relocation of Kovno's Jews into the ghetto to the Jews putting up the barbed wire that would fence them in. One of those he photographed was this gangly teenager named Abe Malnick.
He took pictures very nonchalantly because he was staying next to you the same as a worker. But I knew George Kaddish as a friend. That's the reason I looked at him, and our eyes met.
In 1942, with Hitler's infamous final solution, the killing escalated in the ghettos. At Kovno, more than 9,000 people, including 4,000 children, were executed in a single day. Meanwhile, in Warsaw, Ringelblum witnessed an endless stream of cattle cars carting more than 300,000 people to Treblinka's gas chamber. The eerie emptiness of Warsaw's streets told Ringelblum the time had come to tie up loose ends. Members of Oneg Shabbat transferred their archive to several tin boxes and 3 empty milk cans. Then they buried them in 3 separate locations around the ghetto. And there the milk cans remained, hidden from the retreating Nazis, hidden even from the liberating Allies. In March of 1944, Ringelblum was in hiding with his family when they were betrayed to the Gestapo by a Polish informer. He was executed on the ruins of Warsaw's Pawiak prison. Only 2 out of nearly 100 Onek Shabbat workers survived the Holocaust. In Kovno, by July, the Germans prepared to abandon the ghetto in the face of approaching Russian tanks. By pure coincidence, Kaddish also chose a milk can to safeguard his ghetto archive. He secretly buried his milk can full of negatives and escaped. He continued to take photographs from across the river as the Germans burned the ghetto in an attempt to hide the evidence of their atrocities. After the liberation, Kaddish returned to the smoldering ruins of Kovno. He found the burial site and dug up the milk can. The negatives were safe. Leaving the milk can behind, Kaddish fled to the American-controlled sector of Germany. There, he printed the photographs and exhibited them for Holocaust survivors living in refugee camps. Like Kaddish, the 2 surviving members of the Warsaw Group returned to the ruins of their ghetto after the war to search for their tin boxes and milk cans. One can was found in 1946, another in 1950. The contents of the 2 recovered cans have been carefully preserved, as have the cans themselves. Even with the 3rd milk can missing, the Ringelblum archive is considered the most extensive source in existence documenting Jewish life under the Nazi regime. The Kaddish photographs are also considered a powerful memorial to Holocaust survivors, but for a different reason.
The Nazis tried to dehumanize them. Kaddish, in his photographs, tries to restore that humanity.
Of the 2 recovered Warsaw Ghetto milk cans, one is in the Jewish Historical Institute in Warsaw, Poland, and the other resides in the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. George Kaddish's Kovno milk can was never recovered.